will decide the soul of humanity. The rain over Brooklyn was cold and relentless, hammering the rooftops like a war drum. Steve Rogers stood on the edge of a high-rise, the city's neon glow bleeding into the storm. Far beyond the skyline, a strange green shimmer pulsed in the clouds, steady, unnatural, and wrong. Sam Wilson's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Steve, tell me you're seeing that." "I'm seeing it," Steve replied, his jaw tightening, "and I don't like it." 3 hours earlier, S.H.I.E.L.'s Deep Space Monitoring Array had picked up an anomaly, a burst of energy from the North Atlantic, unlike anything on record. The readings were unstable, almost alive. Fury's voice had been low and urgent when he called. "Cap, we've got ships disappearing in the fog. No distress calls. No wreckage. Just gone. I want you on this." Steve didn't hesitate. Now, the Quinjet sliced through the storm, carrying Steve, Sam, and Natasha Romanoff toward the coordinates. The ocean below churned violently, waves colliding in chaotic patterns. "Looks like the sea's angry," Sam muttered. Natasha's eyes stayed on her scanner. "It's not the sea. It's something under it." Then they saw it, a massive, jagged structure breaching the surface like the spine of some ancient beast. Black stone, slick with seawater, carved with runes that glowed faintly green. Steve's instinct screamed trap. They landed on the slick surface, the wind howling around them. The runes pulsed faster, and the air grew colder. Steve stepped forward, brushing his fingers over the stone. The moment he touched it, the world shifted. The storm vanished. The sky turned black, and from the shadows, figures emerged, skeletal warriors in rusted armor, their eyes burning with green fire. Sam's wings flared open. Steve, we got company." The warriors moved in perfect silence, weapons drawn. Steve raised his shield. "Hold the line." The first wave hit like a hammer. Steel clashed against vibranium, sparks flying. Sam's wings sliced through 2 attackers, but they reformed instantly, bones snapping back into place. Natasha's bullets shattered skulls, but the green fire in their eyes never dimmed. "They're not staying down," she shouted. Steve slammed his shield into one warrior's chest, sending it flying into the abyss. But even as it fell, it dissolved into mist and reappeared behind him. Then, a voice rolled through the darkness like distant thunder. "So, the great Captain America finally comes to my door." From the shadows stepped a tall figure in black and silver armor, a crown of bone upon his head. His eyes glowed with the same green fire as his army. "I am Malachar," he said, his voice like a grave opening. "Lord of the Forgotten, Keeper of the Dead, and soon, Ruler of the Living." Steve's grip on the shield tightened. "Not while I'm breathing." Malachar's smile was cold. "Oh, Captain, I'm counting on that." With a wave of his hand, the ground split open, and skeletal hands clawed their way out, dragging themselves toward the living. The battle became chaos. Sam was yanked from the air by chains of bone. Natasha was surrounded, her weapons running dry. Steve fought like a man possessed, but for every enemy he struck down, 2 more rose. Malachar raised his staff, and the runes on the stone blazed with blinding light. Steve felt the world tilt, and suddenly they were no longer on the ocean. They stood in a vast, ruined city under a blood-red sky. "This," Malachar said, "is the realm between life and death. And here, I am God." Steve's mind raced. They were trapped in another dimension, cut off from S.H.I.E.L.D., from Earth, from everything. And Malachar's army was endless. But Steve Rogers had faced impossible odds before. He wasn't about to stop now. He raised his shield, meeting Malachar's burning gaze. "Then I guess it's time to knock a god off his throne." The air in the realm between life and death was heavy, thick with the scent of ash and something older, the smell of graves long forgotten. The sky above was a swirling canvas of crimson and black, lit only by the green fire burning in the eyes of Malachar's endless army. Steve Rogers stood with his shield raised, Sam Wilson at his side, Natasha Romanoff a few paces back, both breathing hard from the first clash. Around them, the ruined city stretched endlessly, towers of bone and stone, streets cracked and bleeding faint streams of glowing green mist. Malakar's voice carried across the battlefield without effort. You fight for a world that is already mine, Captain. Every soul you've ever saved will kneel before me. Steve's eyes narrowed. You talk too much. The Necromancer's army surged forward. Shields of rusted iron clanged, swords hissed through the air, and the ground trembled under the weight of the dead. Steve charged first, shield smashing into the nearest warrior, sending it sprawling. Sam's wings sliced through another, scattering bones across the cracked pavement. Natasha moved like a shadow, twin batons crackling with electricity as she struck, each hit sending jolts through undead bodies. But the dead didn't stay down. Bones knit back together, skulls reattached, and the green fire in their eyes flared brighter. They're learning, Natasha called out, ducking under a blade. They're adapting to our attacks. Steve gritted his teeth. Then we hit harder. From the far side of the square, Malakar raised his staff. The runes along its length pulsed, and the ground split open. From the fissures rose creatures larger than any they'd faced yet, hulking abominations stitched together from dozens of corpses, their limbs mismatched, their faces a patchwork of skulls. Sam swore under his breath. Oh, that's just wrong. The first of the giants swung a massive club made from a tree trunk wrapped in chains. Steve rolled aside, the impact shattering the stone where he'd stood. Natasha vaulted onto the creature's back, driving her batons into its neck. The abomination roared, spinning wildly, but she held on until it slammed itself into a wall, forcing her to leap clear. Steve hurled his shield. It ricocheted off the giant's knee, then its shoulder, then slammed into its skull with a crack that echoed through the square. The creature staggered but didn't fall. Malakar watched, amused. You cannot win here. This realm feeds on your strength. Every strike you make, every breath you take, brings you closer to joining my ranks. Steve ignored him, focusing on the fight. Sam swooped low, firing a barrage of micro-rockets into the giant's chest. The explosion tore it apart, scattering limbs across the square. But even as the pieces fell, they began crawling back toward each other. Natasha's voice was tight. We need a new plan. Now. Steve's mind raced. If this was truly another dimension, then maybe the rules of Earth didn't apply. Maybe they could use that. Sam, give me the Malakar, Steve said. Sam hesitated. That's suicide. Not if we move fast. Sam swooped down, grabbing Steve by the harness, and launched into the air. Arrows of green energy streaked toward them from skeletal archers on the rooftops. Steve deflected them with his shield, the impacts ringing like church bells. They closed the distance to Malakar, who stood calmly, staff in hand, as if daring them to try. Steve landed hard, shield up. You like to hide behind your army. Let's see how you do up close. Malakar's smile was thin. Very well. The Necromancer moved with impossible speed, his staff a blur. Steve blocked the first strike, but the second caught him in the ribs, sending a shock of cold through his body. It wasn't just pain. It was as if the blow had stolen a piece of his strength. Steve countered with a shield bash, forcing Malakar back a step. Sam dove in from above, wings slicing, but Malakar caught him mid-flight with a gesture, freezing him in the air. You think courage will save you? Malakar said, his voice low and dangerous. Courage is just the slow walk toward the inevitable. Steve lunged, driving the edge of his shield toward Malakar's chest. The Necromancer caught it with one hand, green fire flaring around his fingers, and shoved Steve back with inhuman force. The ground beneath them cracked, and a circle of runes ignited around Steve. He felt the pull immediately like gravity, but sideways, dragging at his soul. Malakar's voice was a whisper in his mind. Join me, Captain. Imagine an army of heroes, undying, unstoppable. Imagine the shield in the hands of eternity. Steve's vision blurred. He saw flashes, Bucky, Sam, Natasha, all with green fire in their eyes, standing beside Malakar. He saw himself, armor blackened, shield cracked, leading the charge of the dead. He clenched his jaw. Not in this lifetime. With a roar, he slammed his shield into the ground, shattering the ruined circle. The green light sputtered and died. Malakar's eyes narrowed. Interesting. Before he could strike again, a deafening roar shook the square. From the far end of the city, something massive was approaching. A creature unlike the others, its body a swirling storm of bones and shadows, its form constantly shifting. Even Malakar turned to look. The warden arrives. Natasha's voice came over comms. Steve, whatever that thing is, it's not here to help us. The warden moved like a hurricane, sweeping through Malakar's lesser soldiers, scattering them like leaves. But when it reached the center of the square, it stopped, and its burning eyes locked on Steve. Malakar stepped back, almost amused. Let us see if you can survive, my pet. The warden lunged. Steve barely rolled aside as a claw the size of a car smashed into the ground where he'd stood. Sam fired rockets into its flank, but they passed through the swirling shadows, hitting nothing solid. Natasha's bullets had no effect. Steve realized the truth. The warden wasn't entirely physical. It was part spirit, part matter, and it could shift between the two at will. Nat, Sam distracted. I'm going for the core. They moved in sync. Sam darted in and out, drawing the warden's attention with bursts of gunfire. Natasha slid under its legs, striking at the joints with her batons. Steve circled wide, looking for the moment when the creature solidified enough to strike. There, a flicker, a heartbeat where the shadows condensed into bone. Steve hurled his shield. It spun through the air, striking the warden's chest with a crack of vibranium on bone. The creature howled, staggering back. Steve caught the shield on the rebound and pressed the attack, each strike timed to those fleeting moments of solidity. The warden roared, swiping wildly, but Steve stayed just ahead of its claws. Finally, with a final, perfectly timed throw, the shield smashed into the creature's core, a glowing green crystal embedded in its chest. The crystal shattered, and the warden dissolved into a storm of dust and bone fragments. The square fell silent. Malakar tilted his head, studying Steve. You are persistent. I like that. Steve raised his shield. Get used to it. Malakar's smile returned. Oh, I will. Because the longer you fight me, the more you feed my power. And soon, Captain, you will beg me to end this. The ground shook again, but this time, it wasn't the warden. From the far horizon, Steve saw movement. An entire army, larger than anything they'd faced yet, was marching toward the city. And at the head of that army was someone Steve knew. Bucky Barnes. His eyes burned green. The sight hit Steve Rogers like a punch to the gut. Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, his oldest friend, his brother in arms, was marching at the head of Malakar's Undead army. His eyes burned with the same green fire as the rest, his face expressionless, his metal arm gleaming under the blood-red sky. Steve's voice caught in his throat. Bucky. Sam landed beside him, wings folding. Tell me that's not. It's him, Steve said, his voice low. And he's not himself. Natasha's gaze was sharp, calculating. If Malakar's controlling him, we need to break that link. Fast. The army behind Bucky stretched to the horizon. Thousands of skeletal warriors, armored revenants, and twisted beasts stitched from the remains of fallen soldiers. Their march was perfectly synchronized, the sound of their boots and bones like a war drum echoing through the ruined city. Malakar stood between them and Steve's team, his staff planted in the ground. Do you see now, Captain? Even the ones you love will serve me. Your past, your future, all mine. Steve stepped forward, shield raised. You're going to regret touching him. Malakar's smile was cold. Then take him if you can. Bucky broke into a run, moving with inhuman speed. His metal arm swung in a brutal arc, colliding with Steve's shield in an explosion of force that sent shockwaves through the square. Steve staggered back, the impact rattling his bones. Bucky, it's me. Steve shouted, blocking another strike. You don't have to do this. Bucky's only answer was a flurry of blows, precise, relentless, deadly. Steve parried and countered, but every strike felt heavier than the last, as if Malakar's magic was amplifying Bucky's strength. Sam swooped in, trying to grab Bucky from behind, but a blast of green energy from Malakar's staff sent him spiraling into a crumbling wall. Natasha darted in low, aiming a stun baton at Bucky's leg, but he caught her wrist mid-strike and hurled her aside like she weighed nothing. Steve knew they couldn't win this fight head-on. Not against Bucky like this. He needed to break Malakar's hold. But how? Then he saw it. Faint green threads of energy, almost invisible, connecting Bucky's chest to the tip of Malakar's staff. The link. Nat. Sam. Keep him busy. Steve called. He charged straight at Malakar. The Necromancer raised his staff, sending a wave of skeletal warriors to intercept, but Steve plowed through them, shield smashing, boots pounding. He leapt, bringing the shield down in a crushing arc toward the staff. Malakar twisted aside, the blow missing by inches. Clever, but not enough. With a flick of his wrist, Malakar sent a chain of bone snaking from the ground, wrapping around Steve's leg and yanking him off his feet. Steve hit the ground hard, the wind knocked from his lungs. Bucky was on him in an instant, metal arm pinning the shield to the ground. His other hand closed around Steve's throat. The green fire in his eyes flared brighter. Steve's vision darkened at the edges. He forced the words out. "You're my friend." For a fraction of a second, Bucky's grip faltered. His brow furrowed, the fire in his eyes flickering. Steve seized the moment, twisting free and slamming his shield into Bucky's chest, sending him sprawling. Natasha was already moving. She hurled one of her batons at the staff, striking it dead center. The impact sent a ripple of green energy through the air, and the threads connecting Bucky to Malakar snapped like brittle wire. Bucky gasped, collapsing to his knees. His eyes cleared, the green fire fading. Steve was at his side instantly. "You with me?" Bucky's voice was hoarse. "Yeah, I think so. What the hell is going on?" "No time," Steve said, hauling him to his feet. "We've got a war to win." Malakar's expression darkened. "You dare take from me what is mine?" The ground shook violently. From the ruins around them, massive bone towers erupted, each topped with a glowing crystal. The crystals pulsed in rhythm, and the dead surged forward with renewed fury. Natasha's eyes widened. "Those crystals, they're powering the army." Steve nodded. "Then we take them out." The team split instantly. Sam took to the air, weaving through volleys of green arrows to reach the nearest tower. He fired a barrage of rockets into the crystal, shattering it in a burst of emerald light. The undead nearest to it collapsed into piles of lifeless bone. Natasha sprinted toward another tower, leaping from rubble to rubble. She scaled the side like a spider, planting explosives at the base of the crystal. The detonation lit the sky, and another wave of undead crumbled. Steve and Bucky fought their way to the third tower, moving in perfect sync like the old days. Steve's shield cleared the path, Bucky's rifle dropping enemies with precise shots. They reached the base, and Bucky's metal arm punched straight through the crystal, shattering it from within. The battlefield shifted. With 3 of the 4 crystals destroyed, Malakar's army faltered, their movements sluggish. But the Necromancer was far from beaten. He raised his staff high, and the last crystal flared so brightly it hurt to look at. The remaining undead surged forward in a final, frenzied assault. Steve's team regrouped in the center of the square, backs to each other, surrounded on all sides. "This is it," Steve said. "We hold here." The fight was brutal. Sam's wings were torn in places, Natasha's arm bled from a deep cut, Bucky's breathing was ragged. Steve's shield was dented, his uniform scorched. But they didn't break. One by one, they cut down the last of the undead, until only Malakar remained, standing at the base of the final crystal. "You think you've won?" he said, his voice echoing unnaturally. "This is only the beginning." He slammed his staff into the ground, and the crystal exploded, not in destruction, but in release. A shockwave of green energy blasted outward, engulfing the city. Steve felt the world twist again. The sky tore open, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness above. From it poured shapes, massive, winged, skeletal creatures, their screeches shaking the air. Malakar's smile was pure malice. "Welcome to the next phase of the war." The sky split open. From the swirling vortex above, the winged dead poured into the realm. Skeletal dragons with tattered flesh still clinging to their frames, gargoyle-like beasts with claws like swords, and phantom riders mounted on bone wyverns. Their screeches were deafening, their shadows blotting out the crimson light. Steve Rogers planted his shield in the cracked ground, bracing against the wind from their descent. Sam Wilson's wings flared wide, his eyes scanning the swarm. "Steve, there's hundreds of them." "Then we take them one at a time," Steve said, voice steady. Bucky Barnes chambered a round in his rifle. "I'll take 10. Natasha Romanoff smirked despite the chaos. "Show off." Malachar stood at the center of it all, staff raised high, the green fire in his eyes blazing brighter than ever. "Behold the harbingers," he called, his voice carrying over the storm. "The sky is mine, the ground is mine, and soon your souls will be mine." The first wave hit like a meteor strike. A skeletal dragon dove straight for Steve, its jaws snapping. He rolled aside, shield slamming into its skull with a crack that sent bone fragments flying. Sam shot upward, weaving through the swarm, firing bursts from his twin SMGs into the wings of the wyverns, sending them spiraling into the ruins below. Natasha leapt onto the back of a gargoyle beast mid-flight, driving her batons into the base of its skull. It shrieked, twisting violently, but she held on until it crashed into a bone tower, shattering both. Bucky's rifle barked again and again, each shot precise, each target falling from the sky. But for every creature they brought down, 2 more emerged from the vortex. Steve's comm crackled with Sam's voice. "We can't win this in the air. We need to shut that portal." Steve's eyes locked on the vortex. At its base, high above the city, a massive spire of black stone jutted toward the sky. At its peak, a crystal the size of a truck pulsed with green light, the anchor holding the portal open. "That's our target," Steve said. "Sam, get me up there." Sam swooped low, Steve grabbing onto his harness. They shot upward, dodging snapping jaws and slashing claws. A wyvern lunged from the side, but Steve swung his shield like a blade, cleaving through its neck. They reached the spire's peak, landing on a narrow ledge just below the crystal. The heat from it was intense, the green light almost blinding. Malachar's voice echoed in their minds. "You cannot destroy what is eternal." Steve ignored it, raising his shield high. "Let's find out." He brought it down with all his strength. The impact rang like a bell, cracks spider-webbing across the crystal surface. Below, Natasha and Bucky fought to keep the swarm off them. Natasha flipped over a charging gargoyle, planting explosives on its back before kicking it into a cluster of wyverns. The blast lit the sky, scattering bone and ash. Bucky reloaded, his metal arm deflecting a claw swipe that would have gutted him. "Steve, whatever you're doing, do it faster." Steve struck the crystal again. This time, it screamed, a sound that wasn't just noise, but pressure in the skull, a psychic wail that made his vision blur. Sam staggered, clutching his head. From the vortex above, a massive shape began to descend, larger than any creature yet. Its wings blotted out the sky, its body a fortress of bone and shadow. Malachar's voice was almost gleeful. "Meet the Dreadwing." The Dreadwing landed on the spire with a force that nearly threw Steve and Sam off. Its head was crowned with jagged horns, its eyes twin furnaces of green fire. Steve braced as it lunged, jaws snapping shut inches from his face. He slammed his shield into its snout, the impact ringing through his arm. Sam fired rockets into its chest, but they barely slowed it. The crystal pulsed faster, feeding the beast. Steve realized the truth. The Dreadwing was the crystal's guardian, bound to protect it until death, and death wasn't an option here. "Sam, distract it," Steve shouted. Sam launched into the air, weaving around the Dreadwing's snapping jaws, drawing it away from the crystal. Steve turned back to the glowing monolith, raising his shield for one final strike. He poured everything into it, every battle, every loss, every ounce of strength left in his body. The shield came down with a thunderous crack. The crystal shattered. The effect was instant. The vortex above began to collapse, the green light fading to black. The winged dead screamed as they were pulled upward, sucked back into the void. The dreadwing roared, its body unraveling into dust that scattered on the wind. Below, the swarm disintegrated mid-flight, raining bone fragments over the city. Natasha and Bucky stood amid the falling ash, breathing hard. Steve and Sam descended from the spire, landing beside them. "It's done," Steve said, but Malachar was still there. The Necromancer stepped forward, his staff lowered, his expression unreadable. "Impressive. You've destroyed my harbingers, closed my gate, and freed your friend. But you've only delayed the inevitable." Steve raised a shield. "We'll keep delaying it until you're gone." Malachar's smile was thin. "You still don't understand. This realm is not my prison. It is my throne. And you've been fighting me on my ground." The city around them began to shift, the streets twisting, towers bending inward. The sky darkened further, the air growing colder. Natasha's voice was tight. "Steve, what's happening?" Malachar's eyes burned brighter. "The final act begins." The ground was alive. Streets twisted like serpents, buildings bent inward, as if the city itself were folding into a colossal maw. The air was thick with green mist, each breath tasting of iron and decay. Above, the crimson sky churned, lightning flashing in jagged bursts of emerald light. Steve Rogers stood with his shield raised, Sam Wilson, Natasha Romanoff, and Bucky Barnes at his side. Malachar loomed before them, his staff planted in the shifting ground, the runes along its length burning brighter than ever. "This realm bends to my will," the Necromancer said, his voice echoing from every direction. "You fought well, Captain, but now you fight the world itself." The ground split open, and skeletal hands the size of cars clawed their way out, dragging up titans of bone and shadow. Each was armed with weapons forged from the ruins, swords made of collapsed towers, shields of fused skulls. Sam's wings snapped open. "We've got incoming, big ones." Natasha loaded fresh magazines into her pistols. "Then we make them fall harder." Bucky racked his rifle. "Let's end this." The Titans charged. Steve met the first head-on, shield clashing against a bone blade the length of a bus. The impact rattled his arm, but he pushed forward, driving the edge of the shield into the Titan's knee. It buckled, and Bucky's rifle barked, shattering its skull in a spray of green fire. Sam dove between two others, firing rockets into their chests. The explosions tore them apart, but the pieces slithered back together, reforming in seconds. "They're regenerating," Sam shouted. Natasha's eyes darted to Malachar. "He's feeding them. We take him out, they stay down." Steve nodded. "Then we cut off the head." They moved as one, carving a path through the Titans. Steve's shield smashed bones to dust. Bucky's rifle dropped anything that got too close. Natasha's batons crackled with electricity, and Sam's aerial strikes kept the enemy off balance. But Malachar was ready. With a sweep of his staff, he summoned a wall of green flame that roared up between them and him. The heat was suffocating, the light blinding. "You think you can reach me?" Malachar's voice was a hiss. "You are already mine." The flame shifted, forming shapes, twisted versions of themselves. Steve stared at his double, a black-armored Captain America, shield cracked and dripping with green fire. It moved like him, fought like him, every strike perfectly mirrored. Sam faced a shadow-winged version of himself. Natasha, a ghostly assassin with eyes like knives. Bucky, a winter soldier with both arms of gleaming steel. Every blow was like fighting a reflection that knew their every move. Steve gritted his teeth. "They're not real. They're just tricks." But the blows still hurt. He changed tactics. Instead of blocking his double strike, he let it hit the shield, then twisted, using the momentum to slam his opponent into the ground. The shadow shattered into smoke. "Hit them wrong," Steve called. "Break the pattern." One by one, the others adapted. Sam feinted high, then struck low, tearing through his double's wing. Natasha spun into her shadow's guard, driving a baton into its chest. Bucky caught his double's punch, twisted the arm, and ripped it free before delivering a final shot to the head. The illusions dissolved, and the green flame wall fell. Malachar stood alone now, the titans crumbling behind him. "You've come far," he said, stepping forward. "But you cannot kill death." Steve raised a shield. "Maybe not, but I can stop you." They clashed. Malachar's staff moved like a serpent, striking from impossible angles. Steve blocked high, ducked low, countered with shield bashes that rang like thunder. Sam strafed from above, firing bursts that forced Malachar to shift his stance. Natasha darted in, landing quick strikes before vanishing into the mist. Bucky's rifle cracked again and again, each shot aimed for the gaps in Malachar's armor. But the Necromancer was relentless. Every wound they inflicted closed instantly, green fire sealing the damage. Steve realized the truth. Malachar's power came from the realm itself. As long as they fought here, he was invincible. "We have to cut him off from this place," Steve shouted. Natasha's eyes lit with understanding. "The staff, it's the anchor." Bucky grinned. "Then let's break it." They focused everything on the staff. Sam's rocket struck first, cracking the runes. Natasha's batons followed, sending sparks of green energy into the air. Bucky's rifle blew chunks from a shaft. Steve leapt high, shield raised. Malachar swung to block, but Steve twisted midair, bringing the shield down with all his strength. The staff shattered. The effect was instant. The green fire in Malachar's eyes flickered. The ground stopped shifting. The titans collapsed into heaps of bone. Malachar staggered, his voice a snarl. "You fools!" Steve didn't give him a chance to recover. He drove the shield into Malachar's chest, sending him sprawling. Sam swooped in, grabbing Steve's arm, hauling him back as the realm began to collapse. The crimson sky tore open, revealing a blinding white light. The city crumbled into nothingness, the green mist burning away. Malachar's scream echoed as he was pulled into the void, his form disintegrating into dust. The light swallowed everything. Steve woke to the sound of waves. He was lying on the deck of a shield transport, the ocean stretching endlessly around them. Sam, Natasha, and Bucky were there, battered but alive. Fury stood over him. "Hell of a trip you took, Cap." Steve sat up slowly. "Malachar, gone," Fury said. "For now." Steve looked at his friends, then out at the horizon. "Then we get ready, because if he comes back..." Bucky finished the thought. "We'll be waiting